Her name was Jennifer. Oh my goodness. Gosh, I like gave myself the I got angry at myself for not knowing her name. Her name was Jennifer L. So I did know her name. I knew her first name. She played Elizabeth. She was really good. She's so good in that role. So good. I think I saw her in another film lately, but I can't remember what film it was. And then Colin Firth. I remember that film. So maybe subconsciously at like that age, I had already known that I was an actor. And I am an actor, you know? And then I lived in the UK and stuff happened. I'll talk about that another day. I don't want to go into it right now too much. I think the summary of what I want to say is like, I gave up on my dreams. Kind of like how I fell out of love with Shakespeare. Yeah. I was just depressed, destitute, lost all hope. My soul wanted to leave the earth and travel to another planet, get her out of here, but my body and my heart and my mind were like, no, Diana. You know, that's the thing. There's no way to describe this without sounding like I was going through a mental health crisis that I wanted to take action on when I didn't. You know? Because I never intended or wanted, and I think that's what the scariest part was. I reached this point, I think, in 2022, 2021, 2022, 2022 maybe, where I was so afraid that my subconscious would act on these really intrusive and scary thoughts that I had when consciously I knew like I meant to be on earth. I want to be here. And I don't know, like this is something I wish people would be honest about, is that it is entirely possible to want to live, but then have your body and your brain have like scary thoughts, and then want to live but not know where to go with these thoughts. Because everyone talks about referring people to helplines and hotlines, and like if you're in crisis, you need to be here and like receive help to pull you back from the brink of crisis. But nobody really talks about the process of, okay, you're out of crisis. How do you actually find joy and receive joy? And I think as you can see from my 状态, my not even her attitude, my energy, my state, her state of being at this moment. State of being. She's so much happier. She has joy in her life. And she's hugging a book. She's hugging a tree. Okay, she's hugging papers that came from a tree. Okay. And I think that's something I learned about someone like me, because I know I'm not alone. And I think that is probably why I felt like I wanted to share this, because some of us, I don't even call it people pleasing. I don't identify as a people pleaser. I identify as someone who receives happiness from seeing other people and other human beings happy. And in my human design chart, I think it's because I am a projector according to this system of trying to understand our energies that we were born with at birth, you know. And say what you will about the authenticity and the validity of these systems. However, as an actor, as someone who works with emotions and energy daily, and who's like, the job of an actor is to bring this energy and fill a character with life and hold space for all of the struggles and the joy and the happiness and the ups and downs of another life, to walk in their shoes and to bring life to something that was inspired from other humans. So playwrights receive so much inspiration from observing the world and observing other human beings, and they take that love for other human beings and they put it into words. And as actors, we bring this inspired compassion to life, right? So as someone who feels so much compassion and love for humanity and people around me and my family, and I really relate with what Mulan did. You know, when you love your family so much that you're willing to embody the son that they could have had, you know, just so you could serve the country in war and let your father like enjoy his retirement. It's like, I totally understand that sort of love. And it's a kind of difficult to explain that in English right now. However, I was at that point where I had given so much of my energy away freely, willingly, you know, because I wanted the rest of these things, like communities and projects and companies that I was co-founding and co-creating and working on as like a first hire, you know, like these things that I wanted to succeed, that I had sort of crafted this, you know, I took an actor's approach to these jobs. And part of the beauty of now embracing my chosen profession and coming out of the artistic closet is that I've realized, and I know, and now I have vocabulary, and I've met teachers, I've asked teachers, okay, how do you actually step out of a role? You know, how do you come out of it? How do you live, go back to your life? You know, like, because I've had issues where I get so into a role. We were doing the Seagull, an adaptation of the Seagull for a scene. And Nina, I guess, was her character. I was so in that character. I was living Nina for like 5 weeks. And I had to ask my instructor, one of my instructors, I was like, how do you come out of it? Like, how do I allow this to exist from my imagination and come out of it? And she gave me some really good techniques. And so, like, how wild is that? Like, people actually have the vocabulary to co-create with me and meet me where I'm at. And she gave me a good technique to, like, give it a little mental space, a little box. And I was like, I never thought of it that way. You know, I never thought of it that way. Recovering workaholic here. Anyway, so yes, I am in the process of selecting the next round of headshots. So this would be the third round of headshots that I've done as an actor. But I'm really hopeful, you know. I did one in Singapore, I did one in New York, and I finally did one in LA with discernment. And I think that is the biggest thing for me about going to this market in LA. Like, there's so many options and so many choices and so many different communities and people and places and things that discernment and intuition and gut instinct and the alignment and balance of all of these elements is key. Because people can tell you this person did this person did that, they're good for this, good for that. But at the end of the day, it really is about our own personal working relationship with who we work with in the industry. Yes. And I'm really grateful to be at this point in my life where I know myself so deeply as a human being that I know when enough is enough, when I've done my part. And it's led me to create more beautiful, more authentic, more aligned work as an artist. And I think that you'll see it in the headshots, you know, even the ones straight out of the camera, so different. My energy is so different. What the photographer is able to capture is so different. What the makeup artist was able to bring out in my natural features, so different. So fingers crossed. I don't know where these things will bring me, but I do know that since I am on the visa that I'm on now, like, let's just embrace it. Go with the flow and build my portfolio. That's what I'm here for. And I'm so grateful that for the first time in my life, I get to fully lean into and admit and be an actor. And I've done a lot of this embodiment work in private for years. You know, I think I made the conscious choice in 2022. Yeah. In 2022, let's talk about it. I'm not going to go into the stuff that I'm not qualified to really talk about, but I will speak from my own experience because I do feel that I'm not the only one struggling with stuff like that. So, yes, what I did was I was in this strange place emotionally, mentally, life situations, you know, and it was very human. I think that's all I can say about the whole thing. Very human. And my gut instinct had told me, I think 6 to 7 months before that moment, like, that I had to start preparing for a shift in my career. I was like, what is going on? I'm so confused. I was like, what? But I love my company. I love what I'm doing. I want this company to do well. I want everybody to succeed. What is going on? Why? Why do I have to move? What is happening? You know? And so I resisted. I was like, no, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. And I was like, okay, I how do I make this a safe, you know, easy transition? How do I like have a safety net, all of that? I'm reading I'm doing The Artist Way right now. And one of the quotes from the book, it says, leap and the safety net will appear, or something like that. Leap and I need to find it. Leap and the net will appear. What is the thing that she said? Yes, leap and the net will appear. Thank you. I integrated that. Thank you, Diana, for integrating that. And how many years ago? I guess at this point it'd be 3 years now. I didn't know that. I was like living in my systems thinking, over analytical brain, you know, my computer science, engineering, mathematical brain. And I was so disconnected from the body and my emotions, you know, my spirit. I'm laughing because the first challenge I set for myself on TikTok was to show up and embrace my humanity and not be an AI. And it's so funny because I used to code these things. I used to create these softwares, and a part of me was sort of slowly becoming an AI. Like at that point, I might as well have been a program, a piece of software, not a human anymore. Yes. So maybe someday I'll go into the exact moment of what was happening, but I know that in that moment, I made the choice. I was like, screw it. She's an actor. She's always going to be an actor. And this is so far away from my real life. This is so far away from who I'm supposed to be. I had the Mulan moment. I had the Mulan moment where she looks into the water. She's like, when will my reflection show who I am inside? It's so funny because, you know, in Mulan, she's going from like all these matchmaking things and being dressed up to becoming a warrior general. I had the opposite. I was like the warrior general. I mean, I play war games, okay? So I was a warrior general in software engineering, super male-dominated field. I was very often the only female in certain rooms. Sometimes, well, yes, and beyond that, the only woman of color. Yes. And along with a lot of other demographic things, you know? And then I was going from that to being like, this is not who I am. Like, when will my reflection show the actor I am and I've always been? And I had this moment where I was so sad. So sad. So sad. And I think it was the first time in my life I actually allowed myself to cry in public. Yeah. And it was uncontrollable. It was like, at that point in my life, I never cried in public before. Ever. Even on stage, I couldn't do it. But I was so upset with myself and my circumstances and things that were reflecting, you know? So when we resist the knowing and we are like fighting what we know is going to happen. So I was like fighting this knowledge that my career was going to shift. And I was like, no, but I love this company. I love these people. I love what we're doing. I was like, no. And then circumstances start reflecting back to you what you need to do, you know. And it's kind of like, if you don't find a way out of the situation, embrace the change, the universe will make it happen. It was sort of that moment. And then in that moment, I committed to myself. I was like, you know what? If this is the life I have to live, if it's my life, I'm going to live my life. Yes. So what did I do? I started committing to being an actor in Singapore. I was in Singapore over the course of the pandemic, working remotely. And I had been dipping my toes back into acting I never really left it, you know. By that point, actually, this is the 4th time I've done headshots. I'd done headshots in London, in the UK. That went nowhere, you know. I had the rights to work. I had the visas. I was meeting all the agents that I could meet that would want to meet me. I was auditioning for all these things, you know, doors in my face, and then I never really left. I sort of forgot about it and focused on my work and on things that were giving me runway. I thought I'd given up. And I was dipping my toes back into it properly. I think that's what it really was. Like, I was non-committal. I forgot about it for a couple of years. I kind of gave up. And 6 years later, maybe, I started, you know, when I was back in Singapore over the pandemic. No, actually, before I got back to Singapore, I was in London. I was actually considering going for another theater conservatory in the UK before the pandemic. I was thinking of applying for it. And things just didn't work out in my own life, in like my home life. And that brought me back to Singapore. Yeah. I missed my grandmother's passing. So that was that's part of why I was like, I need to be here right now. But I did make it in time for my grandfather's final year. It was his kind of final year and a half, maybe. So, one less regret. And I worked remotely. And I had been going back, you know, I'd been going back to my home studio in Singapore for weekend classes, evening classes, you know. Whenever I wasn't working, I was doing something related to acting. And then, yeah, I guess by that point in October, November 2022, so much was on my plate. I just couldn't figure out how I was going to make it work. Because at that point in time, I didn't really have anyone else. I still don't have another Singaporean actor who's gone on this path before me and achieved the things that I know that I want to fulfill in this life. I mean, it's an island city. Population size is tiny. So the probability of another person of my nationality achieving these things in the generation before me is going to be pretty, very, 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 very slim. So yeah, I suppose that's part of the reason why. And I think that's why in the last video I posted, I said, if there even is a problem, it's not, I don't know if there is a problem, as opposed to the fact that there's just no precedence for it. Whew. So let's finish the story. You know, I'm talking a lot about the lessons I've learned from this life experience, but let me actually just return from the segue and the detour. I decided in that moment, and this is what worked for me, right? In that moment, I made that internal commitment. I was like, okay, if the universe wants me to make the change now. I'm going to fully commit to being an actor. And if the path does not exist for someone like me, I will make it. I will create it. I'll make it happen. So what I did was I started producing, I started writing, I started directing, co-creating with other actors and other creatives in Singapore. And that got me somewhere as a producer. I started to build I don't know if I still have this sort of, but I was on this path of building a reputation for being a producer in Singapore, which was not, but my acting, where was she acting? Where was she acting in roles that were not self-created or short films? I did short films, I was doing commercials, I was helping with corporate videos, I was doing a lot of that. But my actor within me was like, don't do a repeat. Don't allow yourself to fall back into the giving of yourself. Yes, because producing is good. It's, if my talents can serve as a producer, yes, let's make it happen. However, there are so many people in the world. There are so many people in the world whose natural inclination and desire is to be known as a producer. Let them. Embrace them. My natural inclination has always been actor. And I'm so tired of putting the actor last in myself. And I think that is what made the difference. That is how I pulled myself out of this hole and this state where I was having strange, really horrifying thoughts that went against my conscious choices, and the scary thing is nothing had happened. In real life, in life, you see me how I'm sitting now. She's the same. She was the same. Except maybe less smiley and less happy. She was less happy, very focused on doing the work, very workaholic, quote unquote, high overperformer, whatever. It was kind of, I think she was kind of boring, but maybe other people may not agree with that. She was a little bit boring in her personal life. Did not have a social life, honestly. She was working. Even her social life was kind of work for her. But yeah, I know she's judging herself now. You're watching this being why is she judging herself? Yes, she was. I that's how I really feel about the person I was at that point in time, and who I kind of let myself become. A shell of who I am. And so, yeah, I would be struggling to go to bed even, because I would have these fears. I would be praying to the universe, to the source of all things, that nothing happens in my sleep, that nothing, because I watched this movie, a horror movie. Okay. I think it's horror. It's a thriller. It was a murder mystery where, based on stuff that happened, where stuff happened an accident, a supposed accident happened in a sleepwalking event, but then by the end of the movie you realize actually no, this was pre-planned and it was premeditated, and then she sort of disguised it as an accident happening in her sleep. But the fact that for half of the movie I sat there thinking, oh my goodness, is this possible? People can actually do such scary things in their sleep. So I was at that point in time in 2022 having these really, 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 really scary thoughts, knowing that consciously I would not ever want to do that to myself, praying for something to change, not even knowing where it was coming from, And what really worked for me is then making that commitment to myself and being like, okay, this is a cry for help within you, Diana. Live your life. Yes. What's even wilder was that by that point in time, I'd done the work. I was going to therapy regularly. After that moment, I actually went on medication for a while, for like 8 months. Everything went really smoothly. And I think my brain was handling the change very well. You know, I was being a creative in Singapore. I was leaning into all of that. By all external measures, I was healthily managing this whatever, state of dysthymia. Well, I discovered that it was chronic depression. It was low-grade chronic depression. And I think that by that point in time, I got to a point in my life where I was like, this is not getting any worse than this. I will not allow you to do anything beyond this. Even the mental thoughts. I decided that my mental health was never gonna get any worse than that. I was never going to become a problem, like a real burden to another human being. Ever. So she was still kind of taking care of herself. She was big sistering herself. And that's what makes it so complicated. And I think that's why I want to dedicate this amount of time to this topic in this video. Because this is something that people don't talk about. And as an eldest child, it's something I've experienced. And I know that other people are definitely facing similar things. In one of my videos on TikTok, I mentioned Mark Chow, Zhao Youting. I think that's how you say his name. He did this scene in 三生三世十里桃花, Eternal Love TV series, where he's just carrying everything for his family. His character, Yehua, is like the crown prince of the heavenly kingdoms. And his wife kind of is going through a karmic trial. She's also a goddess. So he's a god. He's like the son, like the destined ruler of the heavenly kingdoms. And his fiance is going through a karmic trial, so she can't be there. And they have a child, and here's the thing, she doesn't even know it's her child. Sorry, spoiler alert, but it's important to this scene. In this scene, he thinks she's dead. He thinks she's gone, yeah. And in a way, she did sort of go through a rebirth process. So she doesn't even know in one of her like trials, as she ascends through the heavens and goes through these trials to become a stronger deity. And she had a son with this guy. And so she's like AWOL. She's just not there. And this man takes on the role of both father and mother, primary caretaker, and just helpless, and so alone, nobody else. I mean, in this scene, his uncle is probably the only one who really sees him and has picks him up, emotionally, and gives him a pep talk. But he's in this state where he's given everything, and what about him? He lost the love of his life, and he's experiencing that in the scene. And you really need to watch it to know what I mean. I've never seen any other actor, play, TV series, script address this so beautifully and so in such nuance as this scene, as it was manifested in this film. But yeah, I was sort of at that point in my life where, and what he really needed was just someone to see him for who he was. I think he did kind of get that from his uncle in the scene. And that was the moment that I think I was in that sort of emotional state, and I committed to living, full stop. Just living. And what that meant for me was being an actor, embracing my being an actor, getting to a point in Singapore where I was I learned everything I could as an actor. I'd done a lot. I'd gotten as far as I could have gotten as an independent actor and artist in Singapore. And it was time. And I just didn't know where to go. I was so confused. I was where do I go from here? I don't want to be a producer for the rest of my life and then act. I want to act and produce. The 顺序, the order of things was out of whack. It was producer then act, producer then act. I was no, I want to act and then produce. I want to act and produce. I want the cycle to work that way. And then I ended up receiving this opportunity to come and join a conservatory in the US and study here. I don't know what it was. I sort of applied on a whim, honestly. I saw the mission statement of the studio and I was yes, apply. This is the mission statement I need right now. I was I'm not growing anymore. I think that was also another thing. Yeah. So I made the choice. That pulled me out of it, because once you make that commitment to yourself and you're I'm going to live, going to really live, the source of all life starts to give us little nudges and directions. And I'm seeing a lot of this sort of explained very well in The Artist Way, but this is actually my personal experience, right? So the source of all life started nudging me. So I was okay, well, for this point in time, I will write the scripts, I will act, and I will produce. And I think in a way that sort of inspired some of my friends around me to just live their dreams as well, because one of my friends that co-produced this short film that is hiding in my archives right now, waiting for me to be in the right state to edit them, because it's such sensitive material for me. It's not an autobiography. It is a satire and a commentary on a lot of things that I noticed when I was working in tech and living in London. And that strain of Anglo-Chinese educated people. It was a social commentary, truly, on this entire strain of that life experience. So it's very personal for me in that sense. So I'm still nervous about, releasing and editing it. But she co-produced this with me, and then, we met as actors in our home studio in Singapore, and then she went on and lived that. Now, I think, a couple years later, she's doing her thing in Singapore. I'm really happy for her. And but that experience brought me to the next step. And yes, one thing I have to say is the feeling didn't go away. It just lowered its intensity. Yeah. Lowered its intensity. These scary thoughts, scary, ways that I, as a human being, had absorbed all the negativity around my craft and repeated it to myself. Those voices got softer and softer and softer with each step that I took. And then I ended up, I got a new set of headshots taken in Singapore by a portrait photographer, because I only saw one other headshots photographer in Singapore at that time, and I didn't resonate. So I went with another photographer that I resonated with. And I felt creatively inspired by. So I went with her, and those photos got me to the next step. Yeah, I ended up going for a model camp in New York with Coco Rocha. That was probably the second time I cried in public. Okay? Yeah. Second time I authentically cried in public. We can talk about all the other ways that actors manufacture tears, but if you want to talk about authentic, in the moment, feeling the feeling, and then letting the tears come out, it was the second time I really cried in public. It was during an exercise that she did with the whole group of us, the whole cohort of that camp. And it was her approach to the craft of modeling that made me realize, actually, there's something here for me to learn, even as an actor. And even as someone who embraces being a multi-hyphenate person and being, because I had done modeling before. I'd done a lot of pro bono modeling when I was in the UK, even in Singapore. Even a lot of it was just helping other brands and friends with things, being a muse of some sort. And yes, I went and did the camp and did another set of headshots in New York for acting. So I was like, okay, I'm in New York. That's what I was doing at the time. I was doing an online program. Yes, I was doing an online program from a film academy in New York. I think you can tell by the name that I just said in reverse. And I was doing another program out of Los Angeles online. I was doing two programs. I was doing this indie producing and business for actors program out of Los Angeles, remotely in Singapore. And so through those networks, I ended up doing another set of headshots, which turned out very Broadway. Really, when I look at them, I feel very oh, this is very Broadway. It's like the musical Grease, I feel like Sandy in the musical Grease. I feel like, yes, she could be in that musical. With, the one that John Travolta acted in the movie version of. I got chills. They're multiplying. That film. And it was a very different energy. Yes. And then what happened? I ended up landing at my home studio in LA. And with each step, those thoughts have just evaporated by this point. 3 years now. Yes. 3 years since. Three years since the moment. Well, in October this year, it will be 3 years since I committed fully to being an actor first in my profession. How complicated and complex the relationship we have with art is as people. So this story went on a lot longer than I intended, and I'm here for it, you know? I'm owning it. This is my life. I'm gonna go absorb this monologue more tomorrow. Oh, yes, tomorrow. By the time I post this video, shall I just post it tonight? I don't know. You may or may not miss or have seen my live streams on TikTok. Yes. I'm gonna go and sleep, and then I'm gonna wake up in the morning, and I'm going to do a live stream on TikTok because they gave me the option, so why not? And we are gonna go look at my final selection of headshots from this 4th round of headshots. Yes, Diana has spent that much money on headshots in 4 different cities in the world: London, Singapore, New York, and LA. She has invested that much time, energy, and money into simple business cards as an actor. The frustration is real. So let's do it on TikTok. You know, I've been holding back on making my final selections for 4 pictures because I'm managing, developing, and agenting myself. I've done the market research. You know, I did a lot of market research coming into acting 3 years ago on the Singaporean market, the Chinese market, because I'm ethnically Chinese, and Chinese is kind of my second language, to be honest. It's my mother tongue. We call it our mother tongue in Singapore, but in all honesty, it's my second language. And in the English-speaking market. Yes, now we finally circle back to something I mentioned earlier in this video. So I grew up consuming a lot of English, Western, French, European film content, and that really inspired me, and I knew I'm an actor. I watched them and I knew I'm an actor. And then I could probably take these off because they're air drying now. You know, I kind of actually didn't want to blow dry them tonight. I kind of wanted to air dry them and then sleep like that. I can go to sleep, you know, with these things. Remove the clip, just sleep. Anyway, I'd grown up consuming this content because English is my first language. And then 2019, I started gaining exposure to the Chinese market because I was reconnecting with my roots. Really, like truly, you know, like I did higher Chinese in school. So I did like the advanced Chinese class in school. Like I was really good on paper, but then you asked me to speak in the oral assessments, and it was just not working. But the writing was there, the reading was there, and I started developing the confidence to speak Chinese in 2019, and I studied the Chinese market, and a lot of Singaporean producers have been studying the Chinese market a lot. So you can actually see it in the progression of Singaporean film recently in the last, well, 3 years really, since I got into the industry. I remember actually I showed up for the film festival in Singapore, and then I said, we were having this discussion amongst artists, and I was like, I've learned a lot from this film called The Untamed in China, because it's based on a non-heterosexual relationship, and they made it commercially successful and artistically beautiful. And the way they approach the subject matter, like, beautiful. A lot of Chinese content, I think I really like that about it, when two characters are intimate in the bedroom, it's often implied. The focus is on the romance. It's actually on the relationship. It's on the quality. Like, you can see them going in with the emotion, and then the next scene is about the aftermath. Like, when they wake up, does one person leave? And even in and they've done such good jobs of even simple kiss scenes. Like, just a kiss scene has so much depth emotionally, and in The Untamed, they don't hold hands, they don't kiss, they don't touch, but it's in the eyes, it's in the body language, it's in the Easter eggs that the production team has decorated on the bed, even, like little drawings that they added, little very nuanced details in the set design. And so I remember talking about that. And then later on, I heard more about how other producers were looking at, okay, how do these people monetize their films? How are they creating a commercial model? How are they getting sponsors into, you would see these films of 50 episodes, 40 episodes. Some of them are 30. Well, the one I'm thinking about now has 30 episodes, right? And it's Yang Mi, right? Yang Mi is one of the Chinese actresses who also produces, but she's known as an actor who produces. And that was the moment when I realized it's possible. I can be an actor who produces, but be an actor, right? So she's an actor who produces, and what she does is they bring in the sponsorships, and it's in the product placement's not, they have the actors film themed advertisements for commercial breaks. So there's no third party involved. There's no you don't buy a spot. You can buy a package with the studio so that they include your product placement with the character, with the actor drinking your drink and being in character. He's with his what is the word? 古装. He's in his traditional Chinese costume, acting as a god, and the god character is promoting the drink, and then the show starts, And then in the modern series, they'll just have the drink there, and then two girlfriends will be crying tears and drunk and whatever, confessing their hearts out. But the point is not about them doing the drinking or whatever. The can is there. You can see the label, but the story is still the story. So I think a lot of the Singaporean producers are learning a lot from that recently. And I came here with all of that knowledge. Yes, I'd come here with all of that market research done, really. Now she looks a bit like Princess Leia in Star Wars. Have you, not, I don't know. That would be nice. Princess Leia. Now I just gotta do the other side. And yeah, so I don't know what is next. However, what I do know is that I'm happy to be here doing my Chekhov, doing my Shakespeare again, finally actually embracing Shakespeare for the craft, the art that it is, being seen and holding space for it as an artist, without the limitations. Oh my god. And even like the last one I did, so what did I do? The last couple scenes I did the nurse from Romeo and Juliet. That was so fun, super funny. That was really good, actually. And then I did, what did she cast me as? Oh goodness, Iago. This one was like a spur of the moment. I ended up playing Iago in Othello for a scene and studying Iago. How interesting is that? Because we all know, like, if you know Othello, you know who Iago is, right? You never imagined me doing that in class, but I did that, and it had so much fun. Like, I know this man. I know him. I know this man. I know what motivates him. I know why he behaves the way he behaves. And I think it's because I know why he behaves the way he behaves that I've come to terms with a lot of things that have happened in my life. And how fun it is to play him be the villain. I'm so happy. I'm so grateful. And I think if these are not enough words to express my joy, I don't know what words are anymore. Okay, I think I've spent enough time expressing my passion for the craft of acting on the internet today. And yeah, I'm nervous for tomorrow. I'm going live for real with my face, and we're gonna go look through my headshots. Probably only one person will join. Thank you if you do. But I don't even know what time I'm gonna go on yet. But the point is to allow myself to be seen as an actor and not to do it alone. So I'm gonna do that, because 4 times doing headshots, something needs to click this time. I don't know what it is. Yes. And I don't know. I think a part of me at this point in my life, I've kind of resigned to it. I'm like, if this headshot does not land me something that will lift me into the status of a working actor on the global market, I have no idea what I'm gonna do. But I know that I love these photos and they're in line with my energy. They're so me. They're so me. And with this particular photographer, I was able to bring myself and be me. So if nothing happens, I'm at the point where I'm like, okay, whatever, you know, I'm used to it. But what I do know is that inner me will be proud. Like, I can go no, that's too dark. I can live with myself knowing that this set of headshots was worth the preparation, the timing, the alignment, and the weight. Okay. Yes, and then we'll just, well, I did do modeling digitals for the first time in my life. For real, with a professional photographer. So, well, I'll probably do that later on this week in another live video program thing. Studio? Sorry, I don't know TikTok terms. There's so many words. But I'm gonna go live on TikTok. Maybe I'll go live on YouTube at some point, but honestly, TikTok is kind of the place for me right now. I don't know why. Things on that platform and filming on going live on mobile, I think it's the mobile. Yes. Going live from my phone is so easy on TikTok. And the controls are all there so far. I ran an experiment today with the desktop version and on the mobile version, and I was happy with the experiment. You know, there were certain things that I was not happy entirely about, but those were like small things like that they're probably working on anyway. But the actual process of going live, like, I was really nervous at first, but I made it through. So we're gonna do that. And so maybe I'll see you on TikTok and here next time I see you. Bye. Good night.